What's up YouTube, Jason Tome here, and today we're talking about how to scout deer using Google Earth. This is part one of a multiple part series that focuses on just the tools that I use within Google Earth that helps me find deer faster. So if that sounds like something you'll be interested in, stay tuned and we'll jump right in. So let's just pick a spot here. So the first thing I'm doing is using aerial imagery, and I'll just do a quick scan of the landscape. Just see what looks good. Looking for wetlands and diverse habitat. Alright, so let's use this area just as an example. Maybe like this area that's bound by these roads. So let's say you want to learn more about it. And so first off, you can see like what the hunting pressure might be like, because there's a decent amount of houses surrounding it, but it's a pretty big chunk of land, so there's probably going to be deer in here, and there's a lot of cuts going on, some wetlands, so it looks like there's a lot of food because how thick this little shrubby brush mixed in is, and that's because those cuts are starting to grow back up. And so there's also fields and agriculture. You can see the crops growing, so there's a lot going on in this area. And aerial imagery just helps you key in on those food sources and wetlands and the diverse habitat. So you can see a lot of this looks like hardwoods. There's some softwoods it looks like down in here, so you can see the forest composition. So that's really helpful when determining where to scout. So in addition to using aerial imagery, I'll also use the historical imagery button down here. This will bring back all of the historical imagery for this area. So this was back in 1985. Not very clear at this scale. As you keep going to 2018, this is the most recent aerial imagery, and that's what we were just using. So you can go back here and you can see when these cuts were made. So the cuts were still there in 2016, 2013, 2011, and then in 2007 they weren't there. So it looks like it goes from 2007 to 2010. Looks like they were just starting to cut in 2010. Yep, so there's nothing cut in 07, but when you get to 2010, some cuts are starting to show up. And then 2011, you can see that a lot of the cuts are starting to show up here. And now stuff's starting to grow back in a little bit. And that's just imagery in April, so there's no leaves. And then now you can see the vegetation's starting to get greener. So there's some shorter brush that's starting to come in, and that's a good sign because the deer like vegetation at deer height, and so they'll have a lot of browse in here to feed on. And a lot of times when it's really thick like this, they'll have a lot of cover too. So they'll bed in these areas. I'm going to start using the waypoints based on the aerial imagery. So like I can see that this is good. There's some good crops in the area, so I'll take a waypoint, and you can change your waypoint here, and I'll a lot of times just use this food symbol, and then I don't have to write a name. And I might do that a couple times. You don't have to get super detailed with it. There's no crops here, but it's still a pretty good field, so they'll probably be feeding in it. But honestly, this whole area seems like it's a really good food source just because of the cuts. But I think they will prefer to focus their energies on this higher quality food. And it's just, there's a lot of food in one area that's highly nutritious usually in these ag fields. So while those are producing, they'll probably be in there. Also looks like there's going to be plenty of food in here. So aerial imagery is good for finding these wetlands and food sources and forest composition and everything like that. Maybe I'll just throw a pin, maybe I'll make it blue. Let me know there's a water source there. At least the biggest one is over there. Looks like there's some wetland vegetation in there as well, so maybe there's some bedding areas. But after initially looking at this with aerial imagery, I'll then use topographic maps. What you're going to want to do is type in USGS, Topo Maps, Google Earth. And I use the Earth point. And you can just click on View on Google Earth here, and these topo maps will show up for you. So this will give you an idea of the layout of the land and how the deer might be moving in the area. So first, I guess I should say that I'll add a new folder and I'll call it whatever the scouting mission is going to be. So I'll just call this Farmington. And then instead of putting these in temporary places, I'll put them in Farmington. So that way I can toggle this scouting trip. So yeah, back to the topo maps, you can kind of see the layout of the land, and you can use this transparency layer and you can fade it so you can see what's behind it. I find that the best thing to do is just to keep it all the way up and then quickly toggle back and forth like this. So then I do some looking around and I see some points here, top of a hill here, top of a hill here. Some good ridges running all along here, but then there's also some human activity, so I want to stay away from that as much as possible, just to keep the pressure as low as I can. So I'm thinking maybe this would be a spot that I'd want to check out, and you can see the vegetation change here on the steeper part. So maybe there's a bed there. Also looks like a pretty good pinch point with these streams coming down through here. The deer might want to run along the tops of that, right on the outskirts of this field. Might throw something like here, call it, it's pretty flat there, call it a bench. Or I'd call it a pinch. And so what I'm looking for here is just deer that are cruising along this ridge, what's going to funnel them the most. And it seems like this would be a good spot right here for them to cross more often, and possibly for one to bed here. You never really know till you get out there, but these are just preliminary measures that I take. See what else we got. So it looks like some good ridges here in the top of a hill. To scout that, see what's going on over there. So now that I've kind of marked some of the key areas that I want to look at, you can go to this measuring tool, and well, actually the first thing I like to do is just draw a circle. So let's say this is my house. I'll just draw like a 30-mile radius. You can see that right there. Save that. 30-mile radius. That'll just focus my scouting in areas like around my house, so I don't start wandering way out here and all of a sudden it's a 2.5-hour drive. So that's a good way to use the circle tool. But then also, if you're trying to plan how long it's going to take you to scout an area, the line and path tools are pretty handy. I'll usually just use the path and I'll just start connecting the points. If I start at here, walk in, check out that area, walk through the swamp, check out some food, walk down this road, check out these ridges, this food, start heading back home. Something like that, I don't know. And I'd probably at least walk along these thick food sources as well, right on the edges of the thick stuff, and then work my way back home. And so that's 9 miles. So I'd be like, geez, that'd be quite a day. So I'd probably plan to do that in 2 days. Maybe do half of it, come back through, and then start again the next day and loop back around, do something like that, just to make it more of like a 4.5-ish mile day instead of one long 9-mile day. So another thing you can do is download your own icons. So I have this deer here, so I'll use that deer icon. Like if I see a deer out in a field, I'll just mark it. So to do that, you just create a folder, and you can use just regular Google Images, put them in a folder, click add custom icon, and then browse to that folder. And so I've got a couple in here. These will be my scrapes. That'll be if I see a small buck. And that's if I've shot one. So that way I know where I've shot them in the past. It'll pop up in here and you can use that. So another tool that I like to use is state data. So main office of GIS is what I use because I'm from Maine. And it's the Geo Library Data Catalog, and I'm sure other states have similar stuff. But all you need is a KML or a KMZ or a shapefile. And so you can see the Google Earth files here. So there's like a bunch of stuff you can overlay, like deer wintering areas is a layer you could look at. I use conserved lands. There we go. And this is a pretty helpful one. So once that downloads, then you click on that, and then these main conserved lands show up down here. And I've actually already got them in here, so I can just delete this, and then I'll click on mine. And this can slow down your Google Earth a little bit. Once you zoom in, it gets a little better, but when you're looking at them all at once, it can be kind of annoying. So you can see here, there's some parcels that are in this conserved lands. A lot of these are landowners though, so you can't just hunt on any of these parcels. But sometimes you'll get lucky and it'll be state land or something like that. You know, like this is the Maine Bureau of Parks and Lands. It's outside of our area that we were looking at, but this is a big chunk of land that you can probably hunt on. It says public land right there, so and you can see how much there is. So that's a pretty helpful layer to have to find like access points and places to hunt that might be overlooked. So I use that one a lot, but it doesn't really help us out in this area that we're looking at. Guess we can look at some deer wintering areas. So this will show up all them. This is all the mapped deer wintering areas. So there's definitely more out there, but this is just a few of them. So you can see these are pretty preliminary. I think the state just sketches them on based on aerial imagery like what we're using right now. And some of them are probably field delineated, but I don't think all of them are. So you can see it just says deer wintering area. So our site does appear to have wintering areas, but just looking at the aerial imagery, it looks pretty heavily cut. So I don't know how well this would work as a deer wintering area, but something to think about. Just another puzzle piece. So I guess just check out your state websites and look around, or call the town office and ask and see if there's any Google Earth layers or any shapefile layers that you could use to help you with your scouting. And so you can use shapefiles too. So once you have that shapefile downloaded, then you can go to File, Open, Main Conserved Lands, Shapefile, Open, and I don't know, import all. No. Then click on the check mark. And there you go. They look a little different than these ones here, but it's the same information if you click on it. So this tells you can hunt in this area. I tend to just use the Google Earth stuff because it's easier to bring it in. So after you have a rough idea of what you want to scout and you got some waypoints and some lines in there, what I do is I export this onto my phone so I can have it. And you can do this right into the Google Earth app on your phone, but I actually use a different app. So I'll show you guys how to do that now. So since we put everything in the scouting mission in this Farmington folder, I can toggle that on and off, but that just tells me that everything is in there that I need for my scouting mission. So what I'll do is I'll right click, save place as. I'll just keep it called Farmington. Save to my desktop. Here it is. And then what I will do is I will grab my scouting KMZ here, drag it into Dropbox, and now it's uploaded. and then I can access this from my phone. And I'll head into that folder that I created. And in my scouting folder, I can see my Farmington KMZ. So I'll click that. So I'll click these 3 dots here in the upper right hand corner. And I'll click share. And I'll go over to Google Earth. And now I have all that information. So there's my 30-mile radius. So these X's are the icons that I used personally, like my own personal downloaded icons, and the app won't recognize that because they're not native Google Earth icons. So a lot of times I don't even mess with that. I'll just keep using the default icons to avoid this X issue. But I know what they are generally anyway, so it's not a big deal. But there you have it. You can see all the pins that I set, and you can see your location overlaid on top of this, so you can follow exactly where you want to go. So that's a really handy tool to have when you're out there in the woods scouting. Well, there you go, guys. Those are some of the tools I use when scouting deer with Google Earth. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get back. In the next video, we're going to be talking about how to use Google Earth to find deer in scrub shrub vegetation.